Peace be with you. Welcome to the Institute of All Intelligent Life. My name is Allan Keislar, and we are continuing our class on extraterrestrial spirituality. And today we are going to be discussing understanding the meaning of being one with God. Because many different people of different beliefs and ideas talk about becoming one with God, and that may mean a number of different things to different people, but we are going to discuss some extraterrestrial ideas about what becoming one with God means. So last week we talked about God in our hearts, the presence of God, or Allah, within the hearts of everyone, of millions and billions of people on millions and billions of planets, in millions and billions of galaxies, and how it's quite inconceivable how God could be present in the kingdom of heaven or in his supreme throne and at the same time be present in everyone's heart. So it's difficult for us to grasp such an idea with our minds. But it's even more difficult, for me at least, it was, to wrap my mind around another idea which is closely related to that, which explains that, you might say, and that is the concept of the mystery monitor, as I said, a God present within our hearts. So, is God individually present in all of our hearts? Somebody asked that question last week. Is he hearing each and everyone's prayers? So, I mentioned last week the idea of the mystery monitor, which those words come from the Urantia book, an extraterrestrial document. So, the mystery monitor is a very interesting concept because it's a way of explaining, you might say, or a way of understanding how God could be present individually in each and every one of billions and trillions and quadrillions of people's hearts, listening to each one of them individually and responding to them individually with guidance or encouragement or doing something for them. So this idea of the mystery monitor, it is a great mystery how God could be present like this everywhere. But what's even more difficult, at least in the beginning, I was kind of confused by how this could be possible. But the idea is that it's a great mystery. It's not possible for our minds to figure it out. But if we hear this idea and we meditate on it, we pray about it, we reflect on it, then it might make sense to us. So what is that idea? That idea, the mystery monitor is God, but at the same time, God in each person's heart is individualized. So it takes a second to think, what does that mean? Well, I guess the easiest way for me to try to explain what that means is that God is more powerful than we generally give God credit for. God can be present not only as the supreme source of everything, but God can also be present in millions and billions and trillions and quadrillions of individualized portions, you might say, or expansions in everyone's heart. So what's most fascinating to me about this is that this mystery monitor, or this presence of God in everyone's heart, is individualized. So you have to step back a second and think about this. Because we generally, at least I never used to, think about God as being present individually in an individual form in everyone's heart. In other words, somehow I thought about God as being present everywhere, and I thought about God as being all powerful, but it never occurred to me that the God whose presence in my heart is somehow individualized and has his own experience. So even though God is infinite, all knowing, all powerful, present everywhere, still that God in my heart has his own experience and no doubt is aware of the God presence in everyone else's heart, but still has some sort of individual existence in relationship with me, you might say, or experiencing what I am going through. And God present in other people's hearts is having an individualized experience of what's going on in everyone else's lives in whose hearts he is. So that's the first step in trying to understand this great mystery of the mystery monitor, as it is called. To understand this somehow, maybe it's not really possible for our minds to grasp this, certainly not to figure it out on our own, but that's what we're told by extraterrestrial sources who know more than we do, actually, a lot more. So that's one concept that we have to try to understand if we want to really plumb the depths a little more of extraterrestrial spirituality. This is a widespread, I could say, concept or understanding. But there's something even more wonderful or amazing about it, and that has to do with the concept of becoming one with God. So I've always understood that we can never become one with God in the sense of becoming God, because God is the source of everything, and we're obviously not the source of everything. At least that's the way I always saw it. So it was not difficult for me to accept this idea that we cannot become one with God in every way. We may be able to become one with God in many ways, but we can't become one with God in the sense of becoming the source of everything, because and becoming all-knowing, because we don't know everything, and we don't have that experience of being the source of everything. So, how do we become one with God? What is the meaning of becoming one with God? So the explanation, again, this is coming from the Urantia book, is that what we actually become one with is the mystery monitor. We become one. It's also called, anyway, this existence of God in our heart in an individualized way, we become one with, in the sense that we totally come into harmony with each other, and we really become one. When we, the individual soul, when we totally surrender, Islam means surrender, and we achieve that peace. Islam also means peace. We achieve total peace in total surrender to God. It means that we no longer have any separate desire. We no longer have any idea that I want this, I want that. All we want is what God wants. So that full surrender, which is blissful, it's very wonderful and peaceful and happy and joyous and exciting when one achieves that sort of surrender and oneness with God. It really means, and this is the quotation from the Urantia book, a new creature, or a new creation rather. A new creation comes into being when we become one with our mystery monitor. So I guess that was the main thing I was going to explain today. Again, I will repeat, this may be a little shocking, even difficult for us to understand or accept, but it took me a while. But as I started meditating on this and praying about it, it started making more sense to me. A very, very fascinating way to explain our individual existence and our individual relationship with God as an individual. Um, of course, there's much, much more to all of this, but that's all I was going to say. Oh, one last thing I would say that, well, what is the recommended method to achieve that oneness? How do we, of course, we go through a lot of things, we have to have a lot of experiences, but uh, as I've always said, people, in fact, somebody just asked me this yesterday too in the Urdu chat I had yesterday. What's the best way uh, to achieve perfection or to achieve this oneness with God or to become happy, whatever? All these times, whenever I've answered that question, I've always said zikr. That is chanting the names of God. That is a very, very universal and powerful process for success in spiritual life, for achieving real peace and happiness, for achieving oneness with God. And the specific name of God that I have had recommended to me, extraterrestrial source, a name of God from a non earthly language. Of course, as I said yesterday, Allah is also used by extraterrestrials. Adonai is also used by extraterrestrials. These words, which are used in Arabic or Hebrew, they're also used on other planets. Um, but the main name is that I have been instructed is Toini, and I've used it yesterday also. I was chanting Allah and Adonai and Toini. But Toini especially is effective for getting the mercy and getting this coming into um, oneness with, coming into harmony with God present within our hearts. So I will just conclude this, my part of this introduction to the chat, with a little chanting of Toeni. And I ask you one or two things about this name Toeni. It means Rahman Rahim. You know, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. We always say, God, we in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, the most merciful, the all merciful, the Lord of mercy. Um, so that's what Toini means also. But Toini means not only most merciful, but excessively merciful. Uh, Too merciful, you might say. So merciful, that sort of mercy doesn't even seem appropriate. So merciful. So that's what Tuaini means. So we will just pray to Rahman and Rahim, to Allah, the supreme God, the source of everything, the ocean of mercy and love. And that is what we are chanting now. Tuaini. You can join me if you like. Toi ni 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 toi ni. All right. I will see now what comments or questions we may have. Uh, we have some salams and assalamu alaikum and hi sir from Abid Nazir Azimi, Khan Anwar Khan, Amjad Zaib. And Mahmoud Khan asks, Assalamu alaikum sir, kaise hain aap? How are you? I am okay. I'm happy. I always love doing these chats. And, but as I mentioned yesterday also, I've had some problem in my shoulders, become a little weak and painful and hard for me to even lift up my arms sometimes. It's been going on for a few weeks, but just the last 2 or 3 days it's become worse. So I actually went to a doctor and spoke about my shoulder pain, and he did a few tests and said it's rotator cuff injury. So that's a little problem with my health I'm having now. A few other problems, but overall I'm happy to be here. And I don't see any other questions or comments. Maybe this this topic was a little too difficult for anyone to respond to, or I don't know what's going on, if there's some problem with my connection or my cell phone that I'm not seeing any other comments. Um, so if not, maybe I'll repeat a couple of the things I said to conclude and see if in the meantime we do get any comments or questions. Oh, Zain Khan says, keep sharing information from extraterrestrial sources. Thank you very much, yes. I've always stressed that this is very important because we, on human beings on this planet, we have very limited historical knowledge even. We have very little, maybe some, but we have very little information about the history on our planet itself more than a few thousand years ago. And we certainly have extremely limited information about what's going on other planets or in other star systems, what to speak of other galaxies. So there's a lot of information available that extraterrestrials have that we never had before. So it's good information. So I'll just then go over what I was talking about. I was talking about what it means to become one with God. Some people have the idea that oneness with God means we lose our individuality and we become totally one in every way with God. I don't accept that sort of oneness with God really exists. Many people may wish they could have that, and there certainly would be some sort of peace and freedom from anxiety of the individual existence, because often our individual existence causes a lot of problems and miseries and anxieties. But I don't think that is really what happens. And this idea is very, no doubt difficult, but very deep. And I think it's very important to understand this idea that God exists within our hearts as an individual. And at the same time, of course, God exists in the supreme paradise as the original source of everything. But we have an individual relationship with the individual mystery monitor or form of God in our hearts. And we can become one with that being, that form of God or aspect of God. And that oneness means that we lose any separate interest. We lose any selfish idea at all. We no longer even desire or wish or even think about anything separately from the mystery monitor or God in our hearts. So that is no doubt unusual, maybe strange, maybe too difficult to even listen to because it's so different from what we've been taught. At least I had never had any such idea about individual God in relationship to me in my heart, or an individualized form of God or aspect of God in my heart. But the whole point of this is that, not the whole point, but one of the points of this is that mystery monitor in our hearts is something that we can become one with fully. And we, in fact, get transformed into another sort of being in relationship with that mystery monitor. In other words, we become a new creation when we become totally united with that presence of God in our hearts, and we lose any sort of separate selfish interest. We continue to exist. It's not that we stop existing, but we get transformed into a new type of being when we become totally united with and in harmony with God in our hearts. Okay, so Zain Khan says, yes, sir, it's very difficult to understand this topic. All right, so then we don't have any more comments or questions about this, so I think I'll end then and let everyone think about this and meditate on this and pray on this and see if we get any questions later or next week perhaps. Okay, thank you all very much for listening to this difficult topic, But I think it's important for us to try to understand this as we're trying to understand the fundamentals of extraterrestrial spirituality. So thank you for listening. May God protect us all.